My name is Anna. I am 26 years old, and I live in a small town in the south of England. My town is quiet, the kind of place where people know each other's names, where the streets feel safe but sometimes too small. Growing up, I had simple dreams. I didn't want riches, fame, or adventure in faraway countries. I only wanted a happy life, the kind of happiness I saw in family photos in magazines or in the smiles of neighbors. I dreamed of a small house with a little garden, 1 or 2 children, and a kind man by my side. I thought that love would be the center of it all, and I believed love was easy. But I was wrong. I met Daniel when I was 22. He was 25, tall, with brown hair and bright blue eyes that caught the light when he smiled. And he smiled a lot. He had the kind of energy that filled a room, always laughing, always talking. We met at a friend's party. The music was loud, and the room was full of chatter, but when he asked for my number, it felt like the world slowed down for a second. I gave it to him. The very next day, I received a message from him. It was simple. Do you want to meet for coffee? I said yes without thinking twice. We met in town, at a small cafe with wooden chairs and the smell of fresh bread. We talked for hours that day. I liked him, and from then on, we saw each other again and again. He made me laugh, brought me flowers, and called me every night before I went to sleep. After 3 months, I told him, I love you. He said, I love you too. I believed him with all my heart. For 1 year, we were together. I worked at a supermarket, and Daniel worked at a car garage. We didn't have much money, but we had enough. Life felt simple and safe, and I thought my dreams were coming true. But one day, something changed. I started feeling sick in the mornings. At first, I thought it was just a cold. When it happened again, my best friend Emma suggested something I had not dared to think about. Maybe you're pregnant. I laughed and told her no, but deep down, I was unsure. I bought a test. I waited. My hand shook as I looked at the result. I was pregnant. That evening, I went to Daniel's flat. My heart raced as I said, I have news. He looked at me curiously. I said, I'm going to have a baby. The room went quiet. He looked at the floor, not at me. After what felt like forever, he said, Are you sure? I nodded. He walked to the window and stared outside. This is not a good time, he whispered. I'm not ready to be a father. My heart broke. I told him, but we love each other. He didn't answer. He only said, I need time to think. That night, he didn't hold me. The next morning, he left early. I already knew something was wrong. Soon after, everything between us changed. He stopped calling, stopped answering my messages, and avoided me. One day, he finally sent me a message, I can't do this. I'm sorry. That was the last I heard from him. I was alone. Pregnant and alone. When I told my parents, my mom cried with me. My dad stayed silent for a while, then said, We are here for you, Anna. I moved back into my parents' house. I felt small, like a child again, but I wasn't a child anymore. I was going to be a mother. As months passed, I watched my belly grow. I went to the doctor, and I saw my baby on the screen for the first time. I heard her heartbeat, a sound so tiny, yet so strong. I smiled and cried at the same time. I worked at the supermarket until I couldn't anymore. I saved money, bought tiny clothes, and prepared a baby bed. I wanted everything ready. One night, I felt strong pains. My mom rushed me to the hospital. After long hours of pain and fear, I finally heard the sound that changed my life, my baby's cry. "It's a girl," the nurse said. They placed her in my arms. She was small, warm, and soft. I looked at her and whispered, "Hello, baby. I'm your mom." I named her Sophie. She was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. The first months were hard. Sophie cried at night, and I barely slept. I changed diapers, fed her, held her close when she was upset. Sometimes I cried with her, exhausted and scared. But when I looked at her tiny face, when I kissed her soft head, I felt love stronger than anything I had known. Daniel never came. He never called. Once, I saw him in town. He looked at me and then turned away, pretending not to know me. I wanted to scream, "How can you leave your baby?" But I stayed silent and pushed Sophie's stroller forward. Life was not easy. Money was always tight. I wore old clothes so I could buy Sophie what she needed. At work, I smiled for customers while inside I was tired and worried. When Sophie was sick, I stayed home with her, even when my boss warned me that I could lose my job. But Sophie was my priority. She was everything. As Sophie grew, she brought light into my life. She laughed, learned to sit, learned to walk, and filled our home with joy. Even in my darkest moments, she gave me strength. My friends drifted away, busy with their own lives, but I didn't feel completely alone. I had Sophie. When Sophie was 2, I saw Daniel again in the park. He was with another woman. They held hands and laughed. I turned away quickly. Sophie didn't recognize him. To her, he was just a stranger, and maybe that was better. That night, I whispered to her as she slept, "You don't need him. I will give you everything." Later, I received a letter from the council. They offered me a small flat. It wasn't much, 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, and a little kitchen, but it was ours. I moved in with Sophie. The first night we ate toast and tea on the floor. She laughed as her spoon fell, and I smiled, thinking, this is home. Life in the flat was simple but peaceful. I worked hard, took care of Sophie, and did everything I could to provide for her. Some nights I felt lonely, but when Sophie hugged me and said, "I love you, Mommy," I knew I had enough. When Sophie turned 4, she asked me a question I had been dreading, "Mom, do I have a dad?" My heart sank. I told her the truth gently, that she did have a dad, but he chose not to stay. She looked at me and said, "But I have you." I held her tight and promised, "Yes, you have me, and I will never leave." Her teacher later told me, "Sophie is kind and curious. You're doing a good job." Those words stayed in my heart. Maybe I didn't have much money. Maybe life was hard. But Sophie was happy. She was loved. And that meant I was doing enough. On her first day of school, Sophie held my hand tightly. "Will you wait for me?" she asked. I smiled and said, "Yes, I will always wait for you." She walked into her classroom, turned back, and waved. I waved back, tears in my eyes, not of sadness, but of pride. Today, our life is still simple. I still work long hours. I still count every coin. But every morning, Sophie wakes up with a smile and says, "Good morning, Mom." And that is enough for me. One afternoon in the park, a man sat next to me and said, "She looks happy." I looked at Sophie running and laughing with other children. I thought about all the nights alone, the fear, the tears, the strength it took. And then I looked at her bright eyes, her strong little legs, her big smile. "Yes," I said softly. "She is happy." And I realized I did that. Alone. But also together. Because Sophie gave me strength, and I gave her love. And that is our story. If you liked my story, please like, comment, and share. More simple and emotional stories are coming soon.